today's trip to the TV pilot graveyard, we're pulling back the curtain on the chaotic, often absurd world of media sitcoms. Whether it's the urgent deadline of a newspaper office, the ego-driven chaos of a TV studio, the quirky personalities between the mic at a radio station, or the glamorous and not-so-glamorous lives of magazine editors, this subgenre has always promised a behind-the-scenes look at the content we consume. But for every Drop the Dead Donkey or Mary Tyler Moore show, there's a whole newsroom of rejected pilots. Let's dig into the stories that almost broke, but instead just broke down. Our first unbroadcast media-related sitcom pilot is Great News, set in the sleepy offices of Stowbridge Times, a fictional Wiltshire newspaper. The producers say it revolves around 6 hapless journalists who are by turn competitive, ambitious, incompetent and lazy. So that sounds like the fairly typical mix of characteristics you get in any office, except this one makes the news. Kevin McNally plays the editor Alistair, while his 2 reporters, Fee and Emma, are played by Laura Solon and Daisy Haggard. The hopeless sports reporter, Steve, is played by Daniel Mays, while the relic of the office, sub-editor Brian, is played by Tim Preece. The pilot focuses on Alistair's quest to inspire his news team, Fee's triumph at turning a mundane item into a front-page story, and Steve's cumbersome attempts at winning the affections of fellow reporter Emma, as well as tackling an interview with Stowbridge Town FC's manager. All this following a mental weekend out on the Rads in Chippenham. They'd have a high-profile story that will make the locals take notice. The closure of an arts centre to make for a supermarket, and there's a sleazy councillor at the centre of proceedings. Just the sort of story they need to get people reading the paper. The interiors were filmed in BBC's Studio TC8 at Television Centre in December 2006. The exterior location shots had been filmed previously in Trowbridge. The combination of a sleepy local office and a cast of hapless, competitive, ambitious, incompetent and lazy journalists immediately brings to mind some brilliant British sitcoms. The UK sitcom Hot Metal was set in a tabloid newspaper and satirised the sensationalism and unethical practices of the press. This could be a strong indicator of the kind of humour and critical edge Great News might have aimed for. A strong counterpart is The Office, that chronicles the mundane lives of the employees under the incompetent and cringeworthy management of David Brent. The series highlights the petty rivalries, unrequited loves, boredom and absurdities of office life through a pseudo-documentary lens. David Brent is the epitome of incompetent and deluded mismanagement, and many of the other employees exhibit various forms of professional haplessness, laziness and sometimes ambition. While not a newspaper, another parallel in the media arena is Drop the Dead Donkey, following the staff of Globelink News, a fictional independent television news company. The humour comes from the cynical, jaded and morally dubious journalists and crew trying to put together a news broadcast under pressure, including a megalomaniac proprietor, technological mishaps and their own personal failings. While one is TV news and the other is print, the core environment of deadlines, breaking stories and journalistic egos is the same. The characters in Drop the Dead Donkey are exactly the kind of incompetent and lazy individuals found at the Stowbridge Times. They are often self-serving and prone to ethical compromises for a story. Both The Office and Drop the Dead Donkey offer excellent frameworks to dissect what Great News might have achieved, each bringing a slightly different flavour to the dysfunctional workplace sitcom. The pilot wasn't broadcast, so we'll never know if that sleazy councillor got his comeuppance. Our next media pilot is another print publication, but this time in the style of celebrity gossip magazines like Heat. Very little information was made public about the pilot in the production stages, and since it never aired, a lot of guesswork is needed to determine the type of show we've been deprived of. It was written by Andy Rattenbury, who has a diverse writing background, but a significant portion of his credits are in long-running dramas and soaps like Doc Martin, Holby City and The Bill. He also wrote for Hotel Babylon, which was a drama with comedic elements set in a high-end hotel, and he co-created Teachers, a comedy about teachers. Soaps and long-running dramas thrive on well-developed characters and their relationships. Even in dramas, there are often moments of levity and everyday squabbles. Up Close and Personal would likely have focused on the distinct personalities within the gossip magazine office. Given the setting, it's highly probable the humour would have come from observing the absurdities and ethical dilemmas of the celebrity news industry. The pilot was directed by David Schneider, a well-known comedian, writer and director. His comedic background strongly suggests that Up Close and Personal would have leaned heavily into comedy and likely satire. He's known for intelligent and often politically charged humour. This points away from broad slapstick comedy and towards something more nuanced, possibly with a critical eye on the world of celebrity and media. The only confirmed actors were Raquel Cassidy and Joel Dommett. Given Dommett's background, he was likely in a more overtly comic role. Raquel Cassidy, who is known for both comedy and drama, played the character known as Layla. She might have been the features editor, which would be a very fitting and likely part for her. While a direct sitcom comparison set in a celebrity gossip magazine isn't immediately obvious, we can look at shows with similar workplace dynamics or satirical themes. The American show Ugly Betty, while not a pure sitcom, was set in a fashion magazine and explored themes of appearance, identity and the cutthroat nature of the industry. It had a strong comedic element. Another American show set in a high fashion magazine is Just Shoot Me. It focused on the eccentric characters, their personal lives and the often absurd demands of the fashion industry. Up Close and Personal might have had a similar workplace comedy vibe, but with the added layer of celebrity gossip. Another potential comedy route would be to totally satirise the office environment, like the magazine that Patsy in Absolutely Fabulous vaguely worked for. The magazine staff are more interested in perks, gossip and their own indulgent lifestyles than actual work, while still technically holding down high-powered jobs. This aligns perfectly with the satirical potential of a celebrity gossip magazine. Up Close and Personal could have been a very timely and relevant comedy for the mid-2000s, a period where celebrity culture was really booming and the lines between news and entertainment were becoming increasingly blurred. The lack of a direct existing comparison really highlights how unique its premise might have been at the time. Now we're moving from the printed word to a live radio talk show in 7-second delay. Just to explain, some live audience participation radio broadcasts used a tape or nowadays a digital delay system that gives the producer 7 seconds to react to swearing or other inappropriate language. This enables them to bleep out a profanity and in some cases skip to the live feed so part of the dialogue is cut entirely. Digital systems can then adjust the output to add back in the delay. It's only meant to cover unexpected outbursts from contributors, but it seems from the description of this show there are people that would cherish that 7-second delay in real life. As star of the show, Chris Langham explained, 7-second delay is about that window of opportunity which allows us to pause, to think clearly, weigh up the pros and cons and then make the wrong decision. Langham made a few wrong decisions, but we'll come to that later. Langham plays a radio talk show host with Sally Phillips as his neighbour, a barrister in the throes of a divorce. It was made by Granada Television for the ITV network in November 2007 for broadcast in 2008. While Agony is a good parallel for the personal struggles and relationships aspect of Sally Phillips's character, and Frasier for the talk show host and sophisticated banter, I'm Alan Partridge and the Larry Sanders Show offer more direct comparisons to the specific promise of 7-second delay by combining the talk show setting with the personal foibles and anxieties of the host. In I'm Alan Partridge, the titular radio host, like Chris Langham's character, has a talk show, originally on local radio and later a struggling TV show. The humour often comes from his awkward social interactions, his self-importance and his inability to contact genuinely with people. He doesn't have a barrister neighbour in the throes of divorce, but worse, his own personal life is often a mess and intrudes on his professional persona. While Frasier in the US is a good shout for the talk show host element and the character's intellectual leanings, the Larry Sanders Show takes a much more behind the scenes, satirical look at the world of a late night talk show. Larry Sanders is constantly battling network executives, his own insecurities and often the absurd demands of celebrity guests. The personal lives of Larry and his staff are often a chaotic background to the on-air perfection they strive for. The 7-second delay, or rather the need for it, could be a fantastic device for showing the tension between what's said on-air and what's really happening. Langham himself was the catalyst behind the pilot being shelved, never to be broadcast. Several years before the pilot was made, Langham was arrested by Kent police in connection with an investigation into credit card customers paying to access indecent images on the internet. On the 11th of May 2006, Langham was charged with 15 counts of downloading indecent images. After a trial in 2007, Langham was convicted of downloading illicit material, a crime carrying a 10-month prison sentence that was commuted to 6 on appeal. Langham was released after 3 months. All of which begs the question, why Granada Television made the pilot in the first place. This is a fantastic pilot concept, especially with Julia Davis involved. Davis wrote Morning Has Broken with Nick Mohammed. It's a black comedy about the simultaneous collapse of a daytime TV star's personal and work lives. Gail Sinclair is the host of a popular daily television programme, Good Morning with Gail Sinclair. Dubbed the Queen of Daytime, things begin to go wrong for Sinclair when, after 8 glorious years of high ratings and winning awards, the programme begins to lose viewers and tensions break out within the production team. The scenario immediately brings to mind The Life and Times of Vivian Vile, which starred Jennifer Saunders and perfectly captured the grotesque and self-serving world of daytime talk show hosts, their dysfunctional production teams and their blurring of personal and professional boundaries for ratings. The Gail Sinclair character feels like she could be Vivian Vile's spiritual sister. The uncanny echo of the 2023 Philip Schofield ITV This Morning scandal is chillingly prescient, highlighting how Morning Has Broken was tapping into a very real and often dark underbelly of daytime television. The pilot was shot in late May 2014 and a series was commissioned. In September 2015, it was announced that Friends star David Schwimmer had signed on for a starring role as a US producer brought in to try and save the floundering daytime show. Unusually, for a pilot that was never broadcast, quite a lot was talked about it in the media, but the show had been given the green light. Good Morning with Gail Sinclair presents an embarrassingly realistic parody of morning television. Producer Dan Clark said, "Sometimes when you watch This Morning, you do see stuff about weird health issues or pets and you think, this is insane." In the show's opening feature, Mike, the show's resident doctor, played by Nick Mohammed, brings on a dog that can sniff out testicular cancer. It nuzzles into Gail's crotch and backs away, barking. Mike suggests she gets a second opinion. Gail Sinclair, a softly spoken Scot, really isn't a parody of Lorraine Kelly, host of ITV daytime show Lorraine, claimed Clark. The weird thing is, we weren't trying to spoof Lorraine Kelly as such, but it was like out of our control. Something kept pulling us back towards her. The gods were saying, this is who Gail is. It's the idea that everyone's favourite auntie is really this ruthless bitch behind the scenes. It's a funny conceit. Gail is shown to be unnervingly ruthless. She demands her limo driver is fired because he's smelly. She is full of obscene asides and wickedly passive-aggressive barbs. My PA says you have the feel of a slightly haunted woman who probably lives alone, Gail tells her new producer while smiling broadly. The new producer insists on pepping up the format and promotes Mike to permanent co-host, so Gail follows instructions to be more spontaneous by calling the secure unit of the psychiatric hospital live on air so she can wish her former, mentally broken producer a happy birthday. But Gail is too late. Gail is told, still live on air, that the producer patient has hanged herself an hour ago. The scenes are only marginally more toe-curling than Willoughby's This Morning monologue. Firstly, are you okay? I hope so. Ironically, the pilot episode itself hit the buffers. The pilot was well received enough that Channel 4 commissioned a full series. This is a crucial detail as it shows the concept and the pilot itself were deemed strong. The fact that David Schwimmer was set to join the cast further indicates the high hopes for the series. Reports in 2018 claimed it was a mutual decision between Channel 4 and production company Brown Eyed Boy not to proceed, and cited personal circumstances of the creative talent involved. Was there, like Gail and Nick, or Phil and Holly, drama behind the scenes? Dan Clark said, "The truth about Morning Has Broken is less sensational than the current This Morning drama. It was down to scheduling issues and administrative changes. There was a schedule conflict, then someone got ill. Then we had to stop." Clark said he didn't remember the show being officially cancelled. Nick Mohammed, co-writer and co-star, confirmed the show was abandoned and that the decision was mutual. Interestingly, he also mentioned that he and Julia Davis were still working on a new show together for Channel 4 that would likely revive their characters from Morning Has Broken, but no longer in the breakfast TV show setting. This suggests they still love the characters and their dynamic, even if the original premise had become unworkable. Our next unbroadcast sitcom pilot also involves Nick Mohammed, this time as his alter ego, Mr. Swallow. The pilot, that was recorded in February 2019 at Elstree Film and TV Studios, went under the unassuming working title of The Mr. Swallow Show. It features Mr. Swallow along with his house band, with the aid of Kieran Hodgson as Jonathan, the floor runner, and promised to bring glitz, glamour, magic and song and dance to the TV every week. If that wasn't enough, he would also be talking to 2 celebrity guests. Mohammed said, "The angle is that Swallow has been given a chat show, but he just doesn't know what to do with it. So he's trying to handle the whole thing in a typically Mr. Swallow way. But it has a band for him to berate. I want it to feel like Swallow doing Noel's house party. That makes me laugh, just imagining him on that set, being live, not being able to deal with the time pressure and the earpieces and the auto cue." This sounds like a prime example of a character-driven comedy, taking a familiar format, the chat show, and turning it inside out with the unique comedic persona of Mr. Swallow. The humour comes from Swallow's complete lack of suitability for the role and general inability to perform basic tasks, let alone host a show. The audience would be drawn to the spectacular of a show constantly teetering on the edge of disaster. His berating the band and staff is classic comedic trope for an incompetent leader, using their subordinates as scapegoats. Swallow's character is a masterclass in masking crippling anxiety with misplaced confidence. The potential for celebrity guests to be bewildered, annoyed or drawn into Swallow's chaotic world offers rich comedic scenarios. This Time with Alan Partridge is an almost perfect UK comparison, sharing many core elements of a dysfunctional chat magazine show hosted by a deeply flawed and often incompetent individual. Mr. Swallow and Alan Partridge are hosts who are utterly unsuited for the polished world of television, yet are inexplicably given platforms. Their ego, anxiety and social awkwardness are constant sources of cringe comedy. Both shows derive significant humour from the hosts' inability to maintain professionalism, leading to embarrassing gaffes, inappropriate comments and segments going horribly wrong. Alan Partridge famously mistreats his assistant Lynn and is often condescending to his co-host Jenny Gresham. Mr. Swallow's berating the band is a direct parallel. Swallow and Partridge are both highly developed, iconic, comedic characters played by talented actors. The comedy comes from the unwavering consistency of these personas no matter what the situation. This sounds like a brilliant concept, perfectly suited for Channel 4's remit for distinctive and character-led comedy. Nick Mohammed's Mr. Swallow is a brilliantly realised character, and putting him in a chat show format is a natural fit for his escalating ineptitude. The comparisons to This Time with Alan Partridge highlight its potential for razor-sharp satire and cringe comedy. Given the strength of the character and the comedic talent involved, it's a real shame that this one didn't go to series. At least the pilot could have been shown as a one-off. It had all the ingredients for a cult hit and potentially a broader success. Perhaps it was just too niche, or the car crash appeal proved to be hard to sustain over a full series for the commissioning editors. And there they lie, the uncommissioned headlines, the unheard broadcasts, the unread articles of our media sitcom graveyard. It's genuinely fascinating to consider how close we might have been to another Drop the Dead Donkey, or even a journalistic equivalent of Fawlty Towers, where the chaos of the newsroom rivaled the pandemonium of that Torquay hotel. So while we acknowledge the pilots that never quite made the press, we can still enjoy the many brilliant media-centric sitcoms that successfully captured the bizarre world of news and entertainment.